I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Welcome back to Archive Dive, a monthly podcast exploring Superior and Douglas County history. For 120 years, the Carnegie Library has stood on the corner of Hammond Avenue. The Superior City Council recently voted to purchase the time-worn building to repair it to a viable state. It was the first of 63 libraries to be built in Wisconsin with funding from industrialist Andrew Carnegie. The structure served the public until 1992, when the current library was opened. Since then, the vacant building has been the focus of big dreams, but none of them has panned out. Local historian Teddy Meronek is here to discuss its importance to the people of Superior. Thanks for being here, Teddy.
You're welcome, Maria.
So the library, I would imagine, holds a special place in your heart as a librarian.
The library holds a special place in my heart, not only as a librarian, but as a patron. When I was young, I lived in East End, and of course we had our own branch library. But when I had run out of things to read there, my mother would let me take the bus and go downtown to the big library. So my whole life, it's been important to me, but I think especially since I had the chance to work there also.
Right. So this was the first Carnegie Library to be built in Wisconsin.
It was. It didn't get the first grant from Mr. Carnegie. It got the third grant. Green Bay and Sheboygan beat us out. But apparently Superior was very anxious to get it done, and they were the first ones to complete the library building before those other cities.
Excellent. And the architect was a local man?
The architect was Carl Worth, and people are probably, who've lived in Superior, probably very familiar with his work. They may not know who Carl Worth was, but Globe News is a product of Carl Worth's drawing board, along with the Empire Block and lots of other buildings in Superior. He also designed the Grand Opera House, which unfortunately burnt down years ago. Mm-hmm. But people have seen postcards and pictures of that. I like to think of him as the architect of Superior because he built so many buildings or designed so many buildings, including Roosevelt Terrace, here during the 1890s, that, we wouldn't have Superior without Carl Worth's designs.
Right. He almost didn't get the design, though, right?
No, he didn't. The library board, well, this goes back, I should probably tell you about the whole to-do with Carnegie. The library board was very anxious to get a library for Superior because they had been in rented buildings for about 10 years. The library board was organized in 1888. And the Superior Public Library likes to say we were here before Superior was a city because Superior wasn't incorporated until 1889, but the library already had a board in place. And for the first few years, they had to rent places because they had no building and they had no money to build a building. And they went from place to place. I think it was like 5 different sites in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then they heard about Andrew Carnegie and his generous gift to cities across the country for libraries. So in 1900, I think they wrote the first time and asked him for money. And then they didn't hear from him. And then they wrote another letter later in the year, and they sent along like a yearbook of the progress of Superior. And they thought that might encourage them to, look at Superior and give us some money. Well, then they finally heard from Mr. Carnegie's secretary. Well, apparently Mr. Carnegie was in Scotland. And when he got back, he would give this, some thought. And they finally heard in 1901 that, yes, if they could provide a place to build it, and if they could guarantee that the city would support it at 10% of whatever it cost to build the library, Carnegie was willing to give them the money. And so they had to prove that they had a place to put a library, and they had to prove that the city was willing to support it, and Carnegie was willing to give them $50,000. And he based this on the population of the city.
Okay.
Well, I don't know where he got his figures, but in 1900, Superior was 30,000 people. So at $2, which was the standard fee of how he calculated how much money he would give, we were due at least $60,000. But apparently Wisconsin was funded at a higher level than that, like $2.77. But we got $50,000. Well, it's, fine and dandy if you get $50,000, but if you don't have, you, number one, don't have any money, and number two, you need that money to buy a place to put it. What was the board going to do? So they shopped around, and people they had property, but they wanted some money for it.
Right.
And the people who didn't want money for it were located in East End. James Barden offered a place out in East End, but they wanted to build it downtown. They thought that would be more centrally located. Finally, the Hammond family, who I'm sure owed part of their wealth to Superior, came up with the property. They owned the property at 12th and Hammond, and they offered it to the library board. And, of course, the library board was thrilled to get it and went ahead with plans for the library. And there were two architects competing for the design of the building. One of them was Carl Worth, and the other one was a man named George Bertrand, and he was from Minnesota, from Minneapolis. And as I said yesterday, I was just looking through my research about the library, and I came across his name, and I thought, well, I'm just going to Google him, because why was there an architect when there were several architects in Superior? Why was there an architect from Minneapolis competing for this job? And it turned out that George Bertrand had a connection to Superior because he was born in Superior in 1859. The board finally decided, they were divided on, it was 4-4, the vote about who they were going to choose. And they finally decided that they were going to give it to Carl Worth because he was a local boy. Apparently they didn't know about George Bertrand's, tie to Superior, and also that Worth had been born in Germany. And he practiced architecture as much in Duluth as he did in Superior. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I've never seen George Bertrand's drawings of the building. I don't know.
That's not in the archives, huh?
We have at the library very, very few drawings, architectural drawings of Worth's even. So it would be nice to anybody out there have them. Now that I know that George Bertrand was local, and he became a fairly well-known architect in the Twin Cities.
Okay.
So I don't know if his archives are somewhere, but I'm going to look it up now.
Awesome. Okay. And so it opened in 1902?
June of 1902.
What was it like in there? Are there pictures?
There's beautiful photos. They had chandeliers. They had furniture that came, at least the chairs came from the Webster Chair Factory out in South Superior.
Okay.
It was quite beautiful. And it was very different at that time from people of my generation and early generations' experience, because everything you wanted was on one floor. The basement, where in later years the children's room was located, was used at that time as meeting rooms for the public. And then there was another floor which was usually chained off because you didn't want people going up there. At that time was the boardroom and what they called the art room.
Okay.
And that was upstairs, but everything was on the main floor. The children's room was on one side of the circulation desk, and the other side was sort of a reference room. And then the books were behind on stacks or shelves behind the desk, and that because they only had 3 employees when they opened up.
3 employees in that huge building?
In that huge building, they had 3 employees.
Okay. Wow. Now, for people of my generation, we might remember there was a bunch of metal stairs going up to a mezzanine. That was not part of the original.
No, if you see the original photos of the library, it's very beautiful because you can see the windows that were above the stacks in the rear of the library. But in the 1930s, they ran out of space, so they added the mezzanine. And they also moved the children's room downstairs in the 1930s because there just was not enough room. Apparently, someone's calculations at the beginning were not, right for the size of Superior and the size of the library. It probably should have been a tad bit larger than it actually was designed to be. Yeah. But then they did get money from Carnegie again in 1917 for a branch library in East End. So Superior has the honor of having the first and the last Carnegie libraries built in Wisconsin.
Right.
So
both are very different, though.
Very different, and actually the one in East End was designed by a local boy, by Kenneth Crumpton. He designed that, and yeah, they're very different, very, very different buildings. I think Worth relied on a lot of sandstone, local sandstone, and the one in East End is brick. And
has held up.
Yes, I'm partial to it because I was the last librarian who worked there. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It survived a fire.
Did it?
In the fireplace, yeah. The fireplace is an original to the building. They had another one before that, but yeah.
Okay. When you used to post things on Facebook about the library, what is the part that most people remember vividly?
I would say the children's room, by hands down. I mean, people love anything about the children's room, but when you post pictures, the pictures were taken right after it was opened. When you post pictures of how it looked when they opened the doors, I mean, people are stunned because it's so elegant, and the beautiful circulation desk and the chandeliers. The chandeliers always get me. I think, why did you ever take out the chandeliers? They're so beautiful. But yeah, it's a feel-good place, isn't it?
It is. What are some of your fondest memories of the library?
Of working there? What I remember is the sound of people, staff members running up and down the marble stairs if they're marble or whatever they're built of, from the bottom floor, because we had all our workspace downstairs, and you run up those stairs. It echoes throughout the building. And the elegant ladies' room, it still had a chandelier when it closed. That's on the main floor. I remember I had a desk down there when I first started working at the library. I was a stations librarian, so I worked most of my time out in South Superior, but I also had a desk at the main library where I would do my off, when I wasn't working at the library out in South End, I would come there and work. And the space I was in was down, what we called tech services, down in the basement, not really the basement, but the bottom floor of the library. And it had bookshelves running across the whole room, and they were held onto the wall. They were sort of leaning away from the wall, and they were held on by a wire. Oh. And they had these huge government books like laws and ordinances and all these things. They were huge. And one day, the person who was in the office directly above me dropped his old manual typewriter on the floor, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. All of these books are going to come down. But I survived that, and I think they lasted the whole time we were there. So
those are some strong wires.
They must have been, yeah.
There are also parts of the library that most of the public didn't get to see, including there was a bomb shelter there?
There was, I swear, and I'm sure I'm going to hear from everyone I ever worked with at the library. I thought I saw a civil defense sign there over one of these openings that had plastic across it that I wouldn't go down. And I guess I did. My one request before they closed the place was I wanted to go down and see the men's room because it was legendary.
Legendary how?
Legendary. It was like very fancy. It had wainscoting, and it had these wooden stalls. I mean, I don't know what people were talking about. I thought it was kind of elegant. I don't know if it was because it was such a way down. You went down another complete set of stairs when you got down to the lower level to go down to the men's room.
And there wasn't a men's room on the main level?
No, that was for women, and there was right near the children's room, there was also another that was added on. There were lots of things that were added on through the years, like the vault where they kept the local history things.
Oh, an actual vault.
Yes, it was built as a vault, because they wanted to protect that stuff.
Was that on the main level? Was that on the
No, it was right across from the children's room, where the bathroom was right next to it. They did a lot, or some work. I don't know if the WPA during the Depression, the Works Progress Administration, helped with that, but the library benefited from them in an amazing number of ways because they were having financial troubles, of course. Everyone was during the Depression, and the WPA provided some much-needed help as far as staffing during the Depression. But the one thing that they provided, and which is an absolute treasure to the library, is that they hired these women to do an index of local newspapers, which means they started in when did the first newspaper start? 1856. They went through and looked at all the stories and wrote subject headings for all of them, and then the headline of the newspaper and where it appeared in which issue of the newspaper. So there's a card catalog of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of entries from 1856. And when I left in 2019, I think they probably stopped doing it, but...
Okay, where you could try to find a story based on
if you wanted to look up the Christopher Columbus, you would find out where it appeared all those years, in the newspaper. It also had an obituary index.
Okay, wow.
So it goes back to the very beginnings of Superior, but if it hadn't been for the WPA, the library wouldn't have that.
Right. Okay. And once again, the mezzanine came in the
30s.
Because you ran out of room?
Ran out of room. Too many books.
Okay.
They probably ran out of room almost immediately. That's the way I look at it. It's just, too small.
Right, and hence the East End Library
The
that
East
came
End
in.
Library. And East End was, well, towards the end we were crowded a little bit, but not to the extent that the main library was.
Okay.
But we were lucky we had a storeroom downstairs that we could keep things, but yeah.
So were you at the library when they closed and moved to the new one?
I was at East End that day and I sat on the steps and I cried.
Oh.
I sobbed because I thought, this was my childhood library too. I vividly remember the day my sister walked me down there to get a library card. And I had been the last librarian there. And I cried because it was an absolutely wonderful place to work with, wonderful library patrons. And it was a dream job. And I was so sad. And I knew because I only live a block away that I would see it every day of my life from then on.
The library that I used to work at.
I know.
And that one closed before?
No, they both closed on the same day.
The same day. Oh, my goodness.
It was at the very end of the year, 91, and then right away after New Year's we didn't move into a finished library. we moved. We moved. They actually hired a moving company to move the books over from not only Main and East End, but the two stations we had too. And then it was up to the staff to put them on the shelves.
And that was in 1992.
Yeah, I never want to live through that again.
Right. That was a lot of books, I'm sure.
Yeah, and barcoding.
Now, how long after 1992 it closed did things start possibly happening there? Because there were possibilities. Here's this building. What was it going to be used for?
I believe someone purchased it right away, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the idea was maybe to turn it into some sort of housing, maybe apartments, whatever they were calling them at the time. And then there came up the problem with who actually owned the property.
Okay. And this stems back to when they were looking for land for the building, right?
It stems back to the Hammond family donating that property, which they had attached a clause to that said if there's not a library operating on this site, the land's going to revert back to the family. Oh. Well, this is 90 years later, so you need to have everyone sign off on that. So you're chasing Hammond family members all over the world. And in the meantime, there was an arson fire that destroyed, I think, most of the children's room in the basement. And I believe the people who, I don't know if they had purchased it or were going to or were in the midst of it, but backed out of the deal. Okay. So, and ever since then, it's, sort of one failed attempt after another to do something with it.
And during that time, there hasn't been a whole lot of upkeep put into the building, which is where we get to today.
I know. I drove by there one day last winter and I saw frost on the inside of the windows, and I immediately started emailing people about that and knowing that that was the death knell for it. Of course it is. Moisture inside that building, oh my gosh. And I don't even know if I want to go back in.
Really? When was the last time you were in there?
When Bruce Hagen was mayor the second time, he organized an event that he invited, there were a lot of people from town that were invited to go in and look at it. And I went in to see it. And I think once after that, there was an open house too. And it didn't look too bad, but I don't think I could go because I think that the damage has ended up in the basement too, and probably the area where I had my desk around that area. So I'm not really sure if I don't know if I want to go see it. It took me about 15 years to go in East End. Oh, wow. And I don't think I ever want to go in there again either. I'm so sentimental. I'm really glad that it's being taken care of, but I'll always think of it as a library.
Right. Now, just recently, the city council voted to buy the building back and repair it and then put it back on the market. You spoke at that meeting, didn't you?
I did. And I've been involved in historic preservation for a long time. I was involved in the fights to save Central and the Palace Theater, both of which were unsuccessful. But I was also involved in the beginnings when there was talk of first tearing down the library. And luckily was involved in a group that got together and purchased it and saved it at that time.
The Friends of the Carnegie?
The Friends of the Carnegie. And I've learned a lot through the years, and I know that and I said this at the city council meeting, not every old building can be saved, nor should it be saved, but this one needs to be saved. We have the first Carnegie Library in Wisconsin. There are other cities who would kill to have a Carnegie Library. We have two of them, the first and the last, and I think we owe that building just for the fact it's survived 120 years and been mishandled and abused for, the last, 30 years of it, that we owe it to that library to do what we can to save it. There's got to be somebody out there who's going to want it. I hope so. And I think if the city does fix the roof, that'll alleviate some of the problems, and I won't drive by next winter and see frost on the inside of the building. Right. I hope.
Are there any big historic events that you can remember that took place at the library? In itself, a historic building.
It is.
Did presidents come in?
I don't think so. But, there's a lovely story about a Superior photographer, Esther Bubley, who's very well known. I mean, was an award-winning photographer, grew up about a block or two down from the Hammond Avenue Library. And she wanted to be an artist. And she was in high school, and she really wanted to be an artist. And her high school art teacher said to her, "You don't have the talent." That would be heartbreaking. Well, Esther thought she had some talent. Well, anyway, she went to the public library, it's close to her house, and she started looking through old magazines like Life magazine, which were mostly photographs taken by photojournalists. And she got the idea, well, maybe I can't be an artist, with paint on canvas, but maybe I can be an artist in photography. And I think, well, the Superior Public Library had a hand in that. They were there to say, well, here's another option you can look at. I don't know if I ever look at the library in the way that, there might be famous people there. But I think of all those women, and they were mostly women until, the library didn't hire a male director until, I think they hired Carl Johnson in probably the 1950s. Otherwise, there had always been female directors. But I think of those women who really they devoted their lives to that place. I think most people who work there devoted their lives to that place. There's a different feel about working there than working other places. But if it wasn't for those women and everything that they did during the Great Depression to help that place stay afloat by taking drastic pay cuts and, working without pay for months at a time, it wouldn't have survived. So I really think they're the real heroes of this. They were there for the kids who probably didn't have any place to go, kids who needed a shoulder to cry on. I think that in my own experience, too, that you provided that. I always think we're like a bar in a way, somebody to talk to across a desk. Yeah. So they're the real heroes.
They're the heroes. So the library has a future now.
The old library, I hope so. I hope so. And I'll keep bugging people too. As long as I'm here, I want you to save that building. I can't emphasize that enough. It could be a real catalyst for the neighborhood too. Who knows?
It could.
Who knows? It just has meant so much. I don't know if people realize that. It has meant so much to so many people over the years. And we should be proud that Superior had its first library association in 1869. So we are a city that always prized libraries and what they could provide for everybody in town. So it's our duty. It really is our duty to take care of it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Teddy. And thanks for listening to Archive Dive. Episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.
The Superior Telegram is proud to be part of the Trust Project. Learn more at thetrustproject.org.